Good afternoon, happy Sunday. We're here for another Cook Along live in my home studio. I've got a guest here with me today, my cousin, who is my sushi aficionado friend. We always go out and get sushi, and I figured there was no way that I could possibly do a Sushi Sunday without him joining me to tell me how terrible my food really is. Anyway, this is Armin. Everybody say hi.
Hey, everybody.
And without further ado, he will be here to kind of help us along. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with the rice. That's kind of the first thing we're going to start with. So let me go over to the sink and hello. Let's get started with the rice. So you're going to want to get about, I'm doing 3 cups of rice for the 2 of us. Armin eats a lot of sushi, so I've got 3 cups of rice ready to go in my rice cooker. And you really want to make sure that you rinse this. If you're doing this on your own, in your own like a pot or something like that, you're not using a rice cooker, that's fine. You still need to kind of rinse the rice. And what you're looking for is just to get a good amount of water into the bowl. And you'll notice that the water is super cloudy, and that's basically all the starch and any impurities that are kind of stuck to the rice. You basically just want to move it around, get the water super cloudy, and just pour it out. Try not to lose much of the rice. You will lose some, so don't worry about it. You essentially want to just repeat this process until the rice is clear. Or the rice is going to be opaque still, but you want the water to be clear. So this might take 2, 3, or 4 rinses. Just make sure you're not losing rice when you're doing it. And someone just sent me a message, which means that there's probably something wrong with the stream, so I'm going to take a look at that in just a second. So you'll notice it's getting a little bit less opaque. I'm sorry, a little bit less translucent. It's getting more opaque. And the more rice that you're rinsing, the longer it'll take. If you're just doing this for one person, it'll go pretty quick. I'm essentially doing this for 3, so it'll take a little bit longer. And you don't have to get all of the water out every time you do it, but try and get most of it. Now this is going to be one of the longer cook-along lives. I posted about it in the preview. This is probably going to take us about 1.5 hours to 2 hours, and it just kind of depends on how long the rice takes to cook and how much of the side stuff you're going to be making. So there we go. The water is pretty much clean. It's a little bit opaque when we fill the bowl, but that's okay. Let's get as much of that as we can. Now, the reason I like a rice cooker is because I've got convenient little lines over here on how much water to add based on how much rice I have. Since I've got 3 cups of dry rice in here, I'm going to add enough water to get up to that number 3 line. So there we go. And that's about 3 cups of water. Now we're not going to start this cooking right away. We're actually going to let it sit for about 15 to 20 minutes. So I'm going to move this into the cooker. Close the lid, and I'm basically just going to let it sit in here for about 15-20 minutes. Take a look at the rice. Notice that the grains are still kind of pale, I guess. When we come back in 15 minutes and take a look, they're all going to be super white because they will have absorbed a bunch of the water. Now the reason that we do that is because if you don't do that, the rice will actually cook too fast and it'll split. So by keeping the rice, let it soaking a little bit beforehand and making sure that they all absorb a little bit of water, you just make sure that the rice cooks evenly and doesn't break down. So back over to the cutting board. Now while we're over here, I'm going to take a look and see what somebody said. Oh, cool. So that Uncle Roger's episode that we were talking about a couple weeks ago, where the lady was doing a rice cooking demonstration and essentially had too much water in her rice, so she had to drain it and then rinse the rice in a colander. And I pointed you all to this Uncle Roger's video where he actually just tears her apart because he's Asian. He's like, "What are you doing?" Apparently, they're getting together to do a collaboration, so that's kind of fun. So we got the rice waiting. We got about 15 minutes on that. So let's see, 4:36. So we'll go back to that at about 4:50. While we're waiting on that, we're going to get our miso soup going. So if you saw my Instagram story last night, you will have noticed that I put some kombu actually in my pot here, and the kombu's in there. If you feel the water, you'll actually feel that it's a little bit slimy, and that's actually the kombu giving off some of its umami flavors into the water. And that's what you wanted. Now, if you didn't leave it overnight, not a problem. We're going to actually be kind of bringing this up to a slow simmer. And when we do that, it's also going to give it up. But if you are able to put it in the fridge a little bit ahead of time, you just get that much more soaked out of the kombu. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to put this on medium, low actually, and just kind of get this steaming. And I'm not going to cover it. I want this to come up as slow as it can. Now I'm doing it on an induction stove, so it's going to actually come up faster than I probably want it to. But I think that'll be fine. We'll let it simmer. We'll let it sit at just under a simmer for probably 5-6 minutes and let it kind of steam. Then we'll add the next step on this. While we're waiting on this for our miso soup, we're going to start getting our shrimp ready for our sushi. So you'll notice I've got these shrimp. I got some really nice tiger prawns here. And what we're going to do, I've got them in a little container with some ice water. That way they don't cook. Shrimp will cook at room temperature. I'm basically going to pull them out on top of this towel just to kind of let them dry. And we got a little bit of prep work to do with these guys before they're ready to get cooked. So we're going to take care of that while we're waiting for our miso soup base to warm up. So we're going to get these guys out. Actually, open my towel up so I have more room. We just want these guys to kind of dry off a little bit. All right. We don't need them to dry off all the way. We're going to be boiling them, but this will just kind of get them so that you can handle them without them slipping around. So one of the cool things about the ebi that you find on sushi, on the nigiri or on top of like a rainbow roll or another roll, is it always lays pretty flat. They always cut it open. It's always nice and straight. And the way that they actually accomplish that is they grab some bamboo skewers, which I know I didn't tell you to get, I'm sorry in advance. And they basically just run it down the middle part of the shrimp like this and hold it in a straight fashion before they put them into a pot of water to boil. We're not doing it in our miso soup stock, but just pointing to that because it's going to be simmering here in a second. You basically want to insert it right here at the bottom and then just go right underneath the skin, or the shell I should say, all the way down to the tail. And you should be able to see it just kind of sticking out the bottom there. And that'll hold the shrimp nice and straight. And that's essentially what we're going to be doing here. We're making like shrimp popsicles. Kind of fun. We're going to do that for all of the shrimp that we got. I have quite a few shrimp. Like I said, my cousin likes to eat sushi, so do I. And we're going to keep an eye on our miso soup stock. It's called dashi. It's a kind of seafood stock popular in Japanese food. And we're going to let the dashi kind of come up to a little bit of a steam. Like, we don't want it to start simmering yet. I've actually got it too low to actually start simmering. Yep, unflavored toothpicks also work. Thank you for that, Joff. Excellent point. And you want to move kind of quick with this because you don't want the shrimp to warm up to room temperature again. That's when the flavor starts going off and they start kind of getting a little bit fishy. Drop that skewer. No, Doug, that's not for you. Doggo wants to play fetch with the skewer. All right. Let's go ahead and get rid of that. So another cool thing that we're doing today, I've actually got both kinds of crab. So I've got some fresh crab that I found. I don't know if it's fresh. I just know that it looks okay. And it was at the Asian market, so it's probably okay. And we're going to break that down so that we can have some real crab filling for our sushi. And I've also got some of the imitation crab, which is actually pollock. It's a fish that they kind of glue together using various meat glues to resemble crab. We'll make both, and then we will actually have a taste test and see which one we like better. And you'll notice I'm not taking the shrimp apart. I'm not deveining them. We're actually going to devein them later after they've cooked. So don't worry about that. We'll be deveining them and peeling them after they've been boiled. You really just want to get this right underneath the shell. And just kind of so that it's poking out the end there. Now, I probably didn't need to ask for a pound of this, but you know what? It'll get eaten. I don't need it today. Barman doesn't need it today. We'll get to it later in the week. Got two more, and then we'll move on to the crab. There we go. Our shrimp popsicles are essentially done and ready to go. Now I'm actually, the only reason that we had the towel out is so that they didn't slip around while we were handling them. But we do want to keep these guys nice and cool. So we're going to put them right back in the water, right back in the ice water, until we take them over to cook. The miso soup stock here is starting to get a little bit bubbly. It's not steaming yet, but I don't have the temperature up high enough on the actual hot plate here, so I'm actually going to turn it up a little bit and get this like right underneath a boil and just kind of see where it goes. And then while I'm waiting for that to keep coming up, we're going to grab our crab. Our real crab. And we're going to take this guy, we're going to break him down. So the crab, oh, they've already actually kind of taken him apart for me. That makes it even easier. Generally speaking, when you're dealing with a crab, this piece is all together. And you've got this apron down on the bottom. You pick this apron up here, and you peel it back, and you pop it off, like so. And you'll notice that as I'm pulling that off, you see this little cavity in the back. The next step is you basically put your thumb in here and just peel the cavity off. But since they've already, it looks like what they did was they popped off his mandible and then just peeled it off. So he's already been mostly cleaned for me. Not bad, I'll take it. I'm gonna go take him to the sink and give him a rinse. And then we will move forward from there. Giving this guy a quick rinse just to get all of the gook. They've already removed the gills. They've already removed all of the insides. So this actually isn't going to be that difficult to break down. All right, give that a little shake to dry it off. I'm going to grab my kitchen shears and make this a lot easier. All right, we got the water kind of swirling around over here in the pot, which is good. I want to wait until I start seeing wisps of steam kind of come up. And while I'm waiting for that, let me see. With my knife over here, let me grab a little bowl for the crab meat. How's everybody's week been? You guys having a good one? Good weekend? Anything fun coming up this week? So they haven't taken the mandibles off, so I'm going to pop those guys off. Really just kind of peel them backwards, and they come right off. Now to take the crab apart, you essentially just break it in half. Like so. And then for each of the joints, you just go all the way back to the joint and just kind of twist. It'll pop the whole piece off. You just want to do that with all of these. And then with the body, we'll quite literally just start splitting it apart and emptying the meat and putting the shell pieces back on the plate. So any of you guys who are watching, have you guys done sushi before? And I have a feeling my chat's not working because I'm not seeing any messages, although I did see a few in the actual stream. So if y'all are watching, somebody just say hi so I can see that the chat's working. But I'm curious, have you guys done sushi before? If so, how did it turn out? I'm just dumping the shell straight into the trash can over here. All right, cool. My water over here is starting to steam. So it's basically sitting right below a boil, which is what you want. I'm gonna let that go for about 5 minutes. Yeah, I see Etienne. All right, cool. So I have fingers of Kevlar, I guess. I usually just tear right through crab without using crackers or anything. I just kind of tear it apart. And if I get to any spots where there's enough meat that I want to spend my time going after it, I'll use my kitchen shears to kind of cut it open. The one spot where that is a little bit more difficult is the claws, because the shell there is a bit thicker. Sometimes I'll break out a meat tenderizer. So Armin and I haven't been able to go out and actually do any sushi nights during all this shelter-in-place stuff. And we don't really trust take-home sushi. It's always best when it's fresh. And so it's been, what, like, I guess 21-ish weeks since we've had sushi together. And that being said, I figured that if I'm going to be, doing sushi live, I might as well invite him over, let him enjoy a night out, and let me know how my sushi is. And we can compare it to our old favorite place, Happy Roll. Used to be down on Willow Pass Road and is no longer there. The owner sold it to a new place, which is okay. Doesn't have the same feel or charm as Happy Roll did. But not bad, just not what we are accustomed to or used to. So here, we'll see if we can cut through this. And peel it apart. Hey, Debbie, how's it going? Armin, Aunt Debbie says hi. So Armin says hi, Aunt Debbie. He just waved at you. Yeah, I'm 100%. You should give this a try, Aunt Debbie, for sure. If you've never made sushi before at home, it's a lot of fun. There's a bunch of videos on YouTube if you're kind of curious how to select good quality fish for sushi. You can go check that out. It's not as difficult as you might think. Go ahead and cut through this thick one. Just peel them in half. And get the meat out. Alright, so we've got half the crab cleaned, and my soup is ready for the next step. I've got about a handful here of bonito flakes, and these are things that you can buy on Amazon. You can buy them at an Asian market as well. And it's basically dried fermented fish, and what it does, and smoked. So if you smell it, it's got a really rich kind of smoky flavor. It smells really good. And we're gonna put this right into our dashi over here, and it's gonna add a lot of really rich flavor to this soup. Just gonna kind of stir it in by shaking the pan, shaking the pot. We're gonna let that go for another 5 minutes, then we're gonna strain this. So that should give us enough time to break down the rest of our crab. And then on top of all of that, once all of that is done, our rice should be ready to go. And I'll show you what it looks like when it's ready versus when it was just rinsed. So, water started boiling. I'm gonna bring that down a couple of degrees because I don't want it to boil. Just want it to kind of steep. If you boil it, it'll actually, if you boil a kombu for too long, you might get some of the off flavors coming out of it, and you don't want that. It's just like tea. If you make a really, really strong tea or a really strong coffee, and you put boiling water directly on the grounds, you could run the risk of making it too bitter. Same thing with the dashi over here. And you don't have to worry about your crab meat looking good in this case, just because you're going to be mixing it up with mayonnaise to make the filling, and a little bit of sesame oil as well. So just get it out of the shell. If it looks good, if it looks bad, it doesn't matter. Also right now, I wouldn't necessarily go buy crab, just eat crab. I'm not saying the quality is bad, but a lot of this is stuff that's been kind of frozen because nobody's out fishing right now, as far as I understand it. But all that's still kind of on hold. But the crab doesn't smell fishy. It smells really good, actually. There we go. Get the leg. Like I said, I also have imitation crab meat, which is a lot easier to work with, although it's really up to you which one you prefer. Now, you might think you're getting real crab when you go to your sushi restaurant. You might not. You might be getting the imitation crab. So I always recommend at least trying both of them and then deciding which one you like more before you swear that you're, right. Because sometimes when you're making stuff at home, the reason it doesn't taste right is because you're actually not getting the fresh stuff that you think you're getting. And that doesn't just hold true with sushi, that holds true with a lot of stuff. A lot of different foods. You want to make sure you're eating what you think you're eating, make it at home. All right, we're getting a nice smoky flavor out of that dashi. We're almost done with this half of the crab as well. A good amount of crab meat, and I might actually be able to make a crab roll. Let's do that. Pop off the knuckle. Now the easiest way to get the claw is to just literally pull it all the way back like so. It'll pop right out. And then if you have a pair of kitchen shears, just go right from the front to the back. Like so. And then you can just do that and get crab all over yourself, which is one way to do it. Or you can cut it on both ends. And sometimes that works a little bit better. Oh yeah, that actually sounds like a really good idea, Etienne. I don't have any fresh ginger to do that with though, but that's a great idea for next time. And again with this bottom part, we'll just cut all the way through, like so. I hope I'm not giving Armin a shower over there in the corner, because I'm giving myself a shower. There we go. Just peel that off. Then we got our crab meat done. Just gonna kind of break it up in this little bowl. And then we'll move on to our next steps. Get rid of that. Take this over to the sink. Rinse off our crabby hands. And back to the cutting board. Cool, cool. So I'm actually going to take this and set it kind of in this cold bin. It's kind of floating because the ice is displacing and the crab isn't heavy enough to make the dish sink. We'll kind of wipe off our cutting board here. And on to the next step. So I'm going to switch back to this host cam here with the food picture-in-picture, and I'm going to do this here. I like to use a pour-over coffee filter. You can use anything you'd like. If you have a wire mesh strainer, that'll work just as well. But you do want to strain from this pot into something else that can contain the fluid. Now, what we're going to be doing here is really just pouring it straight through. And you'll notice the color of the water going through is a little bit kind of orangish green, I guess, is one way to describe it. And that's all the flavor from the kombu and the bonito flakes infused into this almost tea, which is just delicious. Let me stop this from beeping at me. Stop it. I'm just going to get everything out of this pot. Perfect. Make sure that it strains all. Now this is cool. We're going to leave this kind of on the side, and if it cools down, it's fine. We're going to be reheating it later with the actual miso and tofu and everything once we're ready to kind of plate it up and serve it. But right now, this is the broth that we want. This is kind of the liquid gold. It smells rich. It smells kind of seafoody. When you add the miso to this, it's going to just taste amazing. Make sure we get all of that in. Awesome, awesome. So I'm just going to set this off to the side for now. And let's go take a look at our sushi rice. So it's been about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. We're going to go ahead and take a look at our sushi rice. You'll notice that now everything is stark white. It all is very much uniform. There's a little bit of a dark kernel there I'm going to pick out. You don't have to go through that and like look for all of those, but you'll notice that the rice looks a lot different. It's actually softer. If you pick it out, you can actually break them in half with your finger. This is what you're looking for. When the rice looks like this, when it cooks, it'll all come out uniformly and perfect. So this is how easy a rice cooker is, and it even sings to you, which is nice. So I've got it on a sushi setting. It's got about 44 minutes to go, which is perfect. And then it's got to cool down. So take all of that into account when you're doing sushi. But we've got a lot left to do, so let's keep going. All right, back to our cutting board. At this point, we are actually going to rinse out this pot here, and we're going to make our rice seasoning. It's basically a vinegar. Rice vinegar, sugar, and some salt. And it's going to taste when it's like cooked and in its individual form than it will when you actually mix it with the rice. It'll add a really nice flavor to the rice. So just trust me that it's gonna smell strong, it's gonna taste strong. It won't actually be that strong when it's put into the rice. Or I should say the rice will mellow it. So I've got, in my case, I'm doing 3 cups. If you have 2 cups of uncooked rice, the ratio that I gave you, the 9 parts vinegar, 4 parts sugar, 1 part salt is correct. I'm actually doing about 14 parts vinegar, 6 parts sugar, and 3 parts salt, since there's 3 cups of uncooked rice in there cooking. We'll get this going. We basically just want to bring it up to a temperature that this all dissolves. You can just kind of stir it around like that. It should more or less dissolve. Otherwise, grab a wooden spoon or a rubber spatula. Give it a couple of things. Hey, Jesse. Yeah, man, Armin's here. Hey, Armin, wave to Jesse.
What's up, Jay?
So, yep, Armin's here. He's going to be enjoying some sushi with me. And we're just going to kind of get this going. So I'm going to wait for that to kind of come up to the temperature. While I'm waiting, I'm going to go ahead and grab my imitation crab. Which, this stuff is gross if you eat it on its own. I actually don't like it that much. But once you mix it up with the mayonnaise and everything, it just tastes different, and it tastes correct. So, Armin, are you going to be wanting more nigiri, or are you going to be wanting to do a roll and everything as well?
Everything as well.
Cool. So I'll do 3. I basically do 1 stick of the imitation crab per person, and then that'll allow you to put together a roll or 2 per person, and it's super easy to tear this stuff down if you need to make more. You should be able to find all this stuff at your local Asian market, or if you don't have a local Asian market, your big box retailer should have an international food section that hopefully has these either in like a frozen aisle or a refrigerated aisle. So go and check in those areas. And they kind of come individually wrapped-ish. Now the imitation crab is actually a fish called pollock that they kind of cake together. And all you really have to do is kind of break it apart like this. Just kind of roll it around on the cutting board, and that'll shred it up. It's pretty easy stuff to break down. All right, cool. So I'm also looking over at my rice seasoning over here, and it looks like all of the sugar and salt has dissolved. So I'm going to give it a little bit of a stir. And take it off the heat. I'm actually going to transfer it into this little measuring cup. Now careful, because this stuff is potent. All right, here we go. And by careful, I mean your nasal passages might get a little bit of a dance party going on in there if you inhale too much of it. Not that I've ever done that or anything. So go ahead and get this all kind of shredded up. You can totally take this apart with a knife or chop it down, like, dice it if you want. I think this works a lot faster. You can use a fork also to kind of shred it, but usually your fingers work really well. And then if you want to go through it after you've kind of done this, it's really, really easy to just kind of line it up like this. Grab your knife and give it a good once through, twice through, 3 times through, doesn't matter. Get it down as fine as you want. This is all going to be the stuff inside the roll, so you're really not going to notice it. All right. There we go. I'll grab another bowl really quickly. And scoop that in there. And then what we can do is we can actually start making mixing the mayonnaise and the sesame oil into this, and the real crab. So I like using a pastry scraper to kind of clean up my board when I got a bunch of stuff on it like this. The other option is you can just kind of slide the board over the edge of your counter and sweep into your bowl. I like using a pastry scraper a little bit more because it actually picks everything up off the cutting board, whereas sometimes your hand doesn't. You actually rub things into the cutting board instead of scraping it off. Slide off the end of the knife there, and I'm actually going to get these guys out of the way. Just set them aside in case I need them again. And then the last thing we're going to do before we start working on this, I'm going to fill this back up with some water so that we can boil our shrimp. And we'll get that going. You don't need a ton of water for the shrimp, which is why I'm doing it in kind of this little bowl here. You just want enough water so that your shrimp is submerged, or more or less submerged when you put it into the water. So that looks good. We'll get that boiling. And here we go. You can totally do the seasoning in the microwave. You can also buy seasoned rice vinegar. I believe it's pretty similar to what we just made. But that's not the point of doing a cook-along live, is it? This is fun. We're making our own stuff. All right, let's see. What were we doing? We're getting mayonnaise out for our crab filling while we wait for that to boil. So I've got this awesome Asian mayonnaise called Kewpie, or Kewpie. I don't know how to pronounce it. But it's basically mayonnaise that's made with all egg yolks. So they don't use any egg whites in this. Gives it a richer flavor. We're gonna add a little bit, I guess that's probably a 1/4 cup. You don't wanna overdo this, but you do want enough so that you have kind of a nice paste going on. And we're just gonna mix that through. And you'll notice that this is coming together. It's looking very pasty, which is good. Doesn't look like it's too gloopy though. You definitely don't want it to be mostly mayonnaise. You want it to be a pretty good mix of the two. And that looks pretty perfect. And then the secret weapon is sesame oil. Add just a little bit of sesame oil, maybe a teaspoon of sesame oil into this. And what that'll do is it'll give it that flavor that you've been missing. If you've made this before yourself, and have just used mayonnaise and the imitation crab, it probably didn't taste right because you didn't add sesame oil. Now, of course, if you're only doing 1 stick, don't do a teaspoon. Do like a 1/4 teaspoon. You just want a little bit. You just want that kind of overtone of sesame. And a little bit of sesame oil goes a long way. I would recommend using regular sesame oil, but you can totally experiment with toasted sesame oil if you want. There we go. A little taste. Perfect. That is good. So this, well, I'm going to still use that for the real crab. I'm going to actually put this in the fridge uncovered because it's not going to be in there for very long. Just want to keep it cold. There we go. Into the fridge with you. Jesse says, yo, yo, buddy, know you love the sushi. I imagine he's talking to you. All right, so here's our real crab. We're gonna do the exact same thing. We're gonna start with our mayonnaise. We're gonna add a little bit. Now, before you add the mayonnaise, check and see how wet this is. If your crab is super, super wet, you might wanna kind of give it a squeeze and get some of that moisture out. This is one of the few times I'm actually going to use a paper towel because I don't want my cloth towels smelling like crab for the rest of their lives. And it's a little bit easier to kind of get rid of one of these guys. And my crab is pretty wet, so I'm actually just going to give it a nice squeeze, get a lot of this moisture out. You don't want too much moisture in sushi because it'll cause the sushi to fall apart. So I'm just going to roll that like so, give it a squeeze. I mean, look at how much water is coming out of that. Actually, I'm going to squeeze it over the trash can. Ugh, sponge. Cool. I'll get that out. And I mean, my towels are going to already smell like crab a little bit anyway because I'm using them to clean my hands off. But slightly smelling like crab is better than basically being a crab. I think my skin's allergic to crab. Every time I touch it, I get super itchy. All right, we're going to add a little bit of mayonnaise to this, about the same amount. We have a little bit more real crab here than we did with the imitation crab. And then we're going to grab our spoon, give this a mix. Again, you want it to be not globby, not like gross, but you do want it to be, you want it to come together. Be like a nice mixture. Almost like a chicken salad or a tuna salad. Now we're not adding celery or relish or anything to this because it's going into sushi, but similar texture is what you're looking for. A little bit more mayonnaise. And I see that my stream is kind of dropping, so if you guys are seeing drops, I apologize. I don't know what is up with my Comcast here. Every so often, it just decides that it doesn't want to work right. So here we go. Pretty good. We're going to add a little bit of sesame oil. Again, maybe a teaspoon, maybe a little less if you don't have as much crab. And you'll notice that our water is starting to boil over there, which is perfect. It should be done right about the same time we finish mixing this crab. And there we go, rolling boil. And crab is done. I'm going to give this a little taste. Perfect. That's some good crab. All right. Toss that in the fridge. Again, uncovered. We're going to be using it here very shortly. Now with our water, we're not going to season it or anything. We just want to get some color on the shrimp. So we're quite literally going to pick up our shrimp. I'm probably going to have to do this in a couple of batches, but we'll see. You basically want these guys to go in for about 3 minutes once it comes back up to the boil. Oh, looks like I missed a shrimp in there. Well, maybe I can fit all of these guys in there. Yeah, cool. So we're gonna have to wait for the water to come back up to a boil. The shrimp came from iced water, so the water in the pot has to reheat before it will start boiling again. Once it starts boiling again, basically time it for 3 minutes. And you don't want to cook them until they're rubbery, but you do want to cook them all the way through. And we'll grab this last one since he was hiding from me. We'll get him in there, and you'll see that they're starting to change color already. And just looking beautiful. Cool. Put our soy sauce off to the side. Clean off our spoon here. Set it to the side. Clean off our knife. And wipe our cutting board down. So I'm done with the mayonnaise. We'll put that back in the fridge. And then what I want to do in here is I actually want to add some more ice. Because what we're going to be doing is taking our shrimp straight out of the boiling water and shocking it so that it stops cooking. There goes my sake. I have to refill that. There we go. All right. So this is back up to the boil. We're just going to give it a couple minutes. 2 or 3. Grab another towel. This we use the one we were using to mop up some sake. And simmering is fine. You don't want it to boil over, obviously. I'm using a small pot here just to keep my amount of pans that I'm using down. Another minute on the shrimp, and then we'll pop it into the... There is another one hiding. Oh my god, there's another big one hiding. There's also a small one hiding. So I've got this little baby one who came with it, but I'm not going to cook him yet. I'm going to make him later. Good catch. I totally missed him. Got a lot of shrimp. Alright. I'll set him there until I get the rest of him out. Give it another minute. Thank you for that, Jesse. He might have escaped. Might have escaped to be eaten another day. Not this time. All right, these guys look pretty good. Gonna pop them out straight back into the ice water. And stop that cooking. I'm gonna pull this guy out and we'll put him in the water as soon as these guys all get cooled off. Very awesome. No, Jesse, I don't think you're that far behind. I think you called it. I had to go fishing for him. All right, I need a refill on my sake since I spilled half of it all over my counter. Cool. So we got this guy over here. Get our temperature up, get it boiling, get him cooked. Once these guys have kind of cooled down, you really want them to be cold. If they're warm, it's fine. But I'm gonna wait till mine get nice and chilled. While I'm waiting, I'm gonna come over and take a look at my rice. We got 24 minutes left. All right, cool. So we're good. This is boiling. Give it about 3 minutes. Take a sip of sake. Take a break. Yum. All right, let me come over here and check my stream. All looks good. Cool, cool. All right, let's turn this down so it doesn't boil over. One of the great things about tiger prawns is these stripes on the back. It just looks so cool. Let's see if I can get this down to a simmer where it won't boil over. So now you can pop your skewer out. You're basically going to hold the shrimp or the prawn. You're going to twist the skewer and then it'll pop right out. You can reuse them, you can toss them, you can compost them. Well, I'm not sure if you can compost them. Probably not a good idea. But yeah, do whatever you want. Now on the back of the shrimp here, you got the tail, and then you've got this little like pointy piece. We're gonna remove the pointy piece. We're just gonna pull it straight back like so. And then we're gonna remove the shell. So you can basically come in right in between the two sets of little swimmer legs. Just peel aside one way, all the way down to the tail. You want to take off all of it, all the way down. You don't want to take the tail off. And we're just going to kind of separate the shell from the shrimp and peel it around, and that should get all of the shell and the legs off. And then we can toss that. And we've got this nice little fan on the back. And then here's the shrimp. We're not going to come down the top to clean the digestive tract. We're actually going to slice right up the middle. Almost all the way through. You can kind of spread them open like this. And then go most of the way through. You should be able to see the digestive tract, and you can pull it out from this side. And that way you keep your shrimp in one piece and looking pretty nice. And then that will fit perfectly on top of a roll, on top of a nigiri. And then this guy, I believe, is done. Put him in the cold water. And I'm really just going to put him back in the cold water. And we'll pull some more of these guys out. Do the same thing. Probably do it with 6 to start with. And then I can always go back to it later. There we go. I'll put the finished ones over there on the right. And I'm just going to do one thing at a time, so I'm going to remove all of the skewers first. I'm actually going to turn off my cooktop because I'm not cooking anything. I'm going to remove all of the shells second. Now when you're removing the part of it near the tail section, make sure you hold the tail section so that you actually separate the shell from the tail. Otherwise the tail will probably pop right off. We'll get all the shells off first. And I'm not going to worry too much about the legs. I'm going to worry more about the shell, because when you finish going around the entire shrimp, anything that is attached on the bottom will just kind of come off. So see, I've got like all the legs still down on the bottom, but when I peel the shrimp and the shell comes all the way around, it's just going to kind of naturally take off those legs. And then don't forget to remove this back piece. There's actually a little bit of meat in there. So you'll see there's the piece, there's the meat. A little easier if you do that first. And so all of this is stuff that you can do while you're waiting for your rice to cook. If you're cooking along tonight, you should be about where I'm at. Don't worry if you're falling a little bit behind. Or if you're ahead of me, good job. But while the rice is cooking, we can take care of all of this prep work, all this side work. So when the rice is ready, we'll be ready. Got one more shell to take off here, and then we're good with these guys. We can split them, make sure they're looking good, and then toss them back in the water until we're ready to use them. All right, there we go. Move them off to the side. Got a nice little split. Butterfly him. Take a look. Looks clean. Into the water. Butterfly this guy. Again, you're not going all the way through. You just kind of want to go most of the way through, so that you leave the skin intact. Here you can see the sand, the grit. You can actually just peel it out from this side, and that leaves the back of the shrimp intact for presentation on top of a roll or on top of a rice patty for nigiri. And give them a little rinse in the hot water and back in the cold water. Now, if we didn't put the bamboo skewer through these guys before we cooked them, they would have cooked curled, because that's how they come, and that's kind of their natural shape. But since we skewered them, they're actually a lot easier to work with. There we go. All good. We'll put him in the water. And we'll butterfly second to last one, then we got one more. Take out the grit from this guy. Back into the water. And the last one. Now the cool thing about sushi is once you kind of get everything prepped, people can build their own rolls. It's really not that difficult. It's really not that much prep work if you think about it. Like compared to putting together some of the other stuff that we've done, like ratatouille, I mean this is some pretty basic prep work. All you're doing is really cooking a couple of things, breaking down a couple of seafood items, and cooking some rice. And that's really it. It's intimidating, I think, a lot to a lot of people because you're dealing with raw fish, and that's definitely intimidating. But just by taking a couple of, looking for a couple of common signs, you can actually ensure that you're getting some pretty good quality fish for sushi. Really, just go check YouTube. There's a ton of videos on there that explain how to go and pick sushi. Or if you have an Asian market like the one that's nearby me, they actually sell sushi grade stuff, and it's already cut for you to be used for sushi. So that's super convenient. All right, we're gonna continue with our veggies. So our cucumber, you're really gonna wanna cut this however you want. If you like a lot of cucumber, cut it thicker. If you like less cucumber, cut it thinner. I like to leave the skin on. If you don't, go ahead and peel it. Totally up to you. If you like to put a lot of things inside of your roll, you will probably want to cut these guys down a little bit thinner, because then you can fit more things inside the roll. But if you just like one or two things, like maybe you're making some kappa rolls, which are just cucumber, you might want to just make these large chunks of cucumber. Really, anything inside a sushi roll, since we're American and we're not running a sushi restaurant, you can do whatever you want. You can put cream cheese in there. I don't particularly like cream cheese in my sushi, but I know a lot of people do. So if you want to dice up some cream cheese and get it ready for this, by all means, go for it. So here we go. And that's about good. Just set this back up here on the top. Now I've got some green onions here. I like to line them up kind of diagonally like this. And then when you cut them diagonally, you're not wasting a bunch of onion. Now I'm going to use this onion for both the rolls that I'm making as well as the miso soup. And Armin doesn't really like miso soup, so I'm just going to be making the miso soup for myself. But I'll show you how to do it because I feel like it's an integral part of the sushi dining experience. There we go. And I'm really just going to kind of scoop this up, just set it up here. All good. Ooh, that's also a good idea. Removing the cucumber seeds for sushi and then put them in a gin and tonic. Great idea. The cucumbers that I'm using, the English cucumbers, the seeds are actually really small, really fine, and not very fibrous. So they're ideal if you're chopping up something for sushi or tabbouleh because you get to use a lot more of the cucumber. If you're using like a traditional cucumber, one of the ones that's got the big kind of like thick seeds, yeah, by all means, I would scoop out the cucumber. Same thing with tomatoes. I like to scoop out the seeds because I don't really see a use for them. Another sip of sake. Let's see, how much time left on the rice? 5 minutes. Once the rice is done, we're actually going to let it cool down as well. If you work with sushi rice, I mean, we're gonna use the sushi rice while it's hot and mix in some of our seasoning. However, after we mix in the seasoning, we want the rice to cool down almost to body temperature. I'm gonna probably start working with it here before it gets to that point, since I don't want to be sitting here for another hour. I'm sure you don't want to be watching me sit here for another hour, but you really want to let the rice kind of cool. What that allows it to do is it becomes more starchy and more sticky. The warmer the rice, the harder it is to kind of hold itself together. The starch is still too wet. As it evaporates and as it cools down, the starch becomes more sticky and the rice gets super, super sticky. Which brings us to another point, which we'll get to once we start doing the rice. You want to make sure your hands are soaked. They say kind of like put some water on your hands so that the rice doesn't stick. Get your hands nice and wet. Otherwise, you will have rice for hands. I'm going to dump out this, give this a quick rinse, and then we're going to start our miso soup since our rice is almost done. So again, this is one of the longer form cook-along lives. Generally, they go about an hour. So today's is going to be running a lot longer than that. which is fine. I actually don't mind this format, but I want to find things that are interesting and that will keep people busy for the time that we're working on them. So sushi, kind of fun. We're putting a lot of stuff together. We're doing a lot of things that can kind of be layered on top of each other. There's not a lot of waiting around. Other things, like eventually I'm sure I'll figure out how to get something like a beef Wellington into a cook-along live format, but that's like a day of work. And what'll probably end up happening is I'll say, cool, join me at 9 o'clock and we'll get started. All right, awesome, we'll see you again at noon. All right, cool, we're ready to start cooking, 4:30, let's get back on. But that's gonna be kind of something that I need to figure out for some of those long form things. Sourdough bread, same story. It's not terribly difficult to do. The first couple times you do it, you'll probably mess up, just because that's the nature of making bread. Yet once you kind of get it down, it's easy, but it's an all-day affair, and it's like all day 15 minutes every 2 hours, right? So it's not something where you're constantly working all day, but it takes a lot of attention and a lot of time. So back to the miso soup. All right, so we've got our awesome dashi. It has cooled down a bit. It's about it's warmer than room temperature, but it's cool enough that I can touch it. Still pretty warm. We're gonna go ahead and get this dashi back into our saucier. And what we're going to do is just kind of get this up to a simmer. I really don't want this to boil over. I really don't want it to go hard boil. And I went through a coffee filter, so my stock is super clear. If you went through a mesh strainer, it might be less clear. It's fine. It doesn't make any difference. When you add the miso, you're not going to notice anyway because the miso is going to make the whole soup cloudy. Now I'm using red miso for my miso soup. I like the fact that it's saltier and has a little bit of a stronger flavor. The white miso is supposed to be creamier, and it's really going to be up to your preference. Now, when I got my miso, the only package format that I could buy was like a huge thing of miso. So I've got like jars and jars of miso in my fridge. That might be the case. However, it's fine. It goes really quick and it's super easy to make miso soup. So if this is something you like, by all means. While we're waiting for that to come up, we're gonna get our avocado ready. This is a half avocado that I have had for a couple of days. I'm basically just going to slice off a very thin layer of the old stuff. It's actually not bad, so I'm just gonna eat it myself. Just kind of peel it here real quick. And then that's a snack while I'm cooking. The other bit of this, I'm actually gonna quarter, like so. And the reason I'm quartering it is because it makes it super easy to just peel off the outer skin. Oh, rice is done. My rice cooker is singing at me. So if you have both of these halves together of the avocado and you try and peel it, it's gonna be very difficult to peel because, let's see, I guess it goes this way. Because you have an arc, and an arc is a very stable geometric form. When you try and pull, it's actually like trying to hold itself together. When you break the arc at the top, basically where the cornerstone would go, like the arc stone for an arc, you make it so that it just peels right off. And you have an avocado that you can cut up into whatever size slices you want. So our rice is done cooking. I'm gonna go and grab it, and we're going to get that started now so we can let it cool. So we got that. Let me grab my pot holders. Who knows where I put them? I wish I kept track of things, then maybe I wouldn't be going 18 different directions. I'll just use these. Rice looks perfect. And in the rice cooker bowl is very hot, which is why I'm using the towels or pot holders, if you have them, to manage it. I'm going to dump the rice out into a different bowl here. And then I'm just going to put this back in the cooker for now. I'll rinse it and kind of brush it off when we're done. And then on mine, I just have to make sure that I turn off the rice cooker because otherwise it'll just keep warm. And with nothing in there, there's no reason to keep warm. All right, so this was here. This is in my pocket. Check the bottom of the rice. Sometimes it's kind of dried out, and you don't really want to use that rice. So if you have to, maybe just kind of scoop a little bit off the bottom here. We'll just kind of set that to the side. Ideally, you're going to have a big bamboo platter, essentially, that you're going to be able to kind of run your rice over and like cut your rice out, and that'll help with cooling. That'll also help with kind of aeration. I don't have that. I've got a bowl, so that's what I'm using. But you still want to do the same thing. You want to kind of cut into your rice. You don't want to damage the rice, and you don't want to like smash it together. You really just want to kind of cut into it. It'll keep everything nice and fluffy. And this will help kind of cool the rice down, as well as aerate it. All right, awesome. So we've got 3 cups of uncooked rice. This is about 4.5 cups of cooked rice. I'm going to be using about 1 ounce per cup of my seasoning. So I've got 8 ounces in here. What I'm going to do grab a tablespoon. Basically give a tablespoon per cup. So we had 3 cups of rice. All right, let's turn this down because it's boiling a little too crazy. I just want this to simmer. Simmer down. And then we're just going to mix this in by cutting it again. You want to cut the seasoning into the rice. I like to kind of turn the bowl while I'm doing it. And then what I'll do is kind of scoop everything to one side and then cut it in. And scoop it back over and cut some more. You don't want to overwork the rice, but you do want to make sure that it's thoroughly mixed. All right. Gonna give this a little taste. Hey May, how's it going? Actually gonna add another tablespoon of seasoning. Get that cut in. Remember, you are in control of every aspect of this. So if your rice doesn't taste seasoned enough, go ahead and add more. If it's over seasoned, you'll have to start over, but go slowly and you should be able to get it to a point where you like it. And then just remember how much you used, or write it down. Keep a food diary or a food journal, or I think in the old days they used to call them cookbooks. And just take notes. And there we go. Rice looks good. Give it another taste. Perfect. Cool. So this rice is super starchy, super sticky. If it touches a dry surface, it's going to be stuck to it. I'm going to set my paddle to the side, actually. And then what I want to do, let's see, I'm going to get this towel damp, cover the rice, and that'll just keep it from drying out. And of course, you can use a paper towel if that's what you got. I tend to prefer to use the cloth towels just because they're reusable, they're washable, you can bleach them. And before you cover it up, anything that's on the sides of the bowl, kind of push it down into the main, I don't know, globule of rice, whatever you want to call it. And that'll also keep those individual kernels from drying out, since they will be part of the whole. Cool. There we go. We got a lot of sushi rice. Let's switch to that. We can see our dashi here is simmering a little bit. Let's get this covered. I'm going to put this over to the side so we're ready for it. Now I'm going to eat a slice of avocado. All right. So our dashi, we're going to add our miso to it. Before we add our miso, well, actually, you know what? I am going to do the miso first. I'm going to grab a pair of chopsticks. I like using these to stir the miso into the soup. It just works really well. I'm just going to kind of lop it in and give it a stir. Start with 2 tablespoons for 4 cups of stock. And then if it's not enough, you're more than able to add another tablespoon. Bazak, stop. Give it a nice stir. You'll feel when the lump is gone. Hey, 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 stop it. No, no barking. We don't bark. And you'll see that it gives the miso soup its distinct cloudiness. And then we're going to add our wakame, which is not the same as nori. If you can't find it, you can use nori. But this is a different seaweed. You'll notice that it's kind of curled together. It's dried kelp, dried seaweed. It's very much like tea. When you put it in here, it's actually going to kind of bloom and become a full sheet of seaweed. So we're going to do that. Give that kind of a stir around. And then the last bit, I'm going to grab, I don't know, I guess about a tablespoon and a half, maybe a little more, 2 tablespoons maybe, of green onion, and toss that into the miso soup. Again, the soup is up to you. If you don't like green onions in your miso soup, don't put green onions in your miso soup. If you don't like seaweed in your miso soup, don't put the seaweed in your miso soup. The last bit for the miso is going to be tofu. Firm tofu or extra firm tofu. And let's see, I've got a block right here. And again, you get to decide how big you want your chunks of tofu, or if you want it at all. If you don't want tofu, don't put tofu. What I'm going to do is basically come in and cut like, probably 3/4 inch cubes, about like so. And I don't want too many, I just want them to be kind of like little prizes that I find in there, little treats. And I want them to all be about the same size. So I'll cut them. I might want to make one more slab here. We'll cut it. And we'll just give it another little dice. And that should be perfect for the miso soup here. Just gonna break them up in. And the reason that I'm putting them into the soup right now is because they are cold. They came straight out of the fridge. If you put these into a bowl and then poured the soup over, you would instantly it'd be like putting them into a bowl with ice cubes. This way we can bring the soup back up to a simmer before we serve it. All right. Miso soup is on its way. Our rice is cooling down. We got our shrimp ready to go. We've got our veggies ready. We can chop our avocado down a little bit. And we can start pulling our fish out. So I'm going to start with some fish that I had from earlier in the week. Actually, you know what? I'm going to pull everything out. There's a couple of different ways to break your fish down based on whether you're making nigiri or whether you're making maki, which are the rolls. And I'll explain that in just a second. Give this a stir, make sure none of the tofu's sticking to the bottom. You'll notice if you're looking, all those little granules of wakame are now like full-on little sheets of seaweed. So if you don't like this in your miso soup, don't get the wakame. If you do, I mean, I think it's great. Totally up to you, it's your taste. I'll put this up here. And then what I'm going to do with my avocado is actually cut it about halfway up, like so. And cut this into large-ish chunks. And then in half. There we go. And then this into smaller strips. Avocado is kind of the hardest piece to work with because it's got that void in the middle where the seed goes. So you'll have to play around with it, and I'm still not perfect with my avocado as far as what size works the best for rolls. But you know what? It's all going to taste the same, and I think it'll work out for you. There we go. Cool. So we got the miso soup bubbling. We're gonna go ahead and turn this down to like just basically a warm setting, a 175. Yeah, leeks are totally different than green onions. They have a slight onion flavor, but it's really mild. Oh, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. Almost leek size. I see. That would be awesome. I would love to see those. I would love to eat those. All right, cool. Let's start with our nigiri. The rice has cooled down. Still a little bit warm for what I would ideally want, but let's start with that. I'm actually going to turn this off and move my miso soup over to a gas burner. I think you guys get the idea of what's going on with it. I'm going to turn it on low to keep it warm. And we're going to get started with our sushi. Let's see. I don't want the heat from that coming through, so I'll do that. So here we go. Got our rice in here. You'll notice that it's sticking to everything it touches. And the first thing that I want to do is actually cut up the fish that I'm using. So here are the sushi style, or the sushi cuts of fish. So this is a salmon. Very easy to spot that. And you'll see that it's already kind of cut and trimmed to be the right size for sushi. Now, when you're making nigiri, or when you're making, when you're putting fish over the top of a roll, you always want to cut against, or I should say across the grain. And quite literally at like a 90-degree across the grain, not mostly. So we'll notice that this piece of salmon here, it's actually running at a 45-degree angle, the grain here. So we are going to want to make a cut here and kind of discard this piece. We're not going to discard it. We're actually going to use it as filling in one of the rolls. And you really want to make sure your knives are clean and hopefully sharp when you're doing this. Ideally, you'll have a sushi knife. I don't have a sushi knife, so I'm just using my normal knife. It'll work pretty well. But we're going to make our first cut. You want to go about 45-degree angle, and you want to make sure that you're cutting enough off that you're going to be able to use this as kind of a slice. So this I'm just going to set back in the tray that it came in. And I'm going to cut off 2 or 3 slices. And what I'm going to do here is actually switch to this view. Which view? Oh, the picture-in-picture's behind. Let me switch that real quick. Let me grab... Hey, K-Just, thank you. That's awesome. Let me move this up 1. Cool. All right. So we've got our fish here. It's ready to go. There's a bunch of different ways you can slice this, and it's totally up to you. You do want to go against the grain, or across the grain, I should say, and you want to do it in as few strokes as possible. So usually it's 1 stroke forward, 1 stroke back, or just 1 long stroke back. If you have a sushi knife, it's going to be about this long, so it's really easy to do 1 fluid stroke. Armin can't see this because he's blind, but it's about a 14 to 15 inch long knife if you're using a sushi knife. So you can just put your 2 fingers on the surface of the salmon to kind of hold it, and then you just basically figure out what the thickness is you want. I'm going to go for about a 1/4 inch here. I'm just going to cut right through. It's going to take me about 3. There we go. That's the easiest way to cut a piece of fish for sushi. The shape doesn't matter so much. Ideally, it's going to be a little bit more square than this. This is going to work fine. If you want to make it a little bit thicker, same thing. You're just going to come in, just going to cut down, make it a little bit thicker. There we go. 2 pieces of fish for sushi. Now, that's one way to cut it. Another way to cut it is you cut most of the way down diagonally, like so. And then just before you get down to the board, you actually go up and cut straight down. And then that gives you a little bit of a bevel on the bottom. Honestly, it's totally up to you if you want to do that or not. Higher end restaurants do that for sure. At-home sushi making may not be as important for you. I'm going to cut 1 more piece here, and then we're going to start making our nigiri pieces. I'm sure Armin's getting hungry over there. Now I'm going to keep these pieces separate. I have my 1 piece here for the nigiri that I'm cutting. I know that I have the diagonal here that's going 90 degrees to the grain. And then I've got my piece here for the inside sushi piece. And you can actually see on the salmon that I had from earlier in the week, I've got a lot of little pieces in there that are going to be perfect for fillings in rolls. But for nigiri, you really want to kind of keep it like this. So here we go with our rice. I'm actually going to move my water bowl over here. I'm just going to get my hands nice and wet. You can put some vinegar in here if you'd like, and what that'll do is actually kind of sanitize your hands as you're going. Totally up to you. It will add a little bit of a mild vinegar flavor to your rice. And by vinegar, I mean like rice vinegar. You want to pull up a little ball of rice. I think officially, if you go and look at the International School of Sushi, they say 16 or 17 grams of rice. I just kind of eyeball it. With your other hand, you're going to grab a piece of fish. You're going to hold it right around the bottom knuckles on your free hand, and you're going to hold it with your thumb at the top. You're going to take the rice ball. You're going to set it right on the middle. This actually might be a little bit big for this piece of fish, so I'm going to adjust. Probably a huge no-no. Someone will come up to my door and tell me that I did it wrong. That's fine. I'm going to make this another ball. Put it there. And you're going to cradle the fish in the rice and push down with your finger like so. And then what you're going to do is actually turn it upside down like so. And then you're going to use your middle finger and your thumb to kind of square it off. And the thumb of your other finger to kind of give it a block at the top here. You're going to flip it around like 180 degrees, the exact same thing. And what you're doing is squaring up the rice at the bottom and forming it. You're also kind of draping the fish around the rice. One more time. And there you go, you got a piece of nigiri. ready to eat. Now the shape of the nigiri is going to depend on the cut of fish you get. If you do your own filleting for this, you can control that a lot more. I'm not that good, so I did not do that. So we've got one piece of salmon nigiri. I'm going to make another piece of salmon nigiri. Give it over to Armin and let him tell me what he thinks. Ooh, I got to make him some soy sauce too. So ideally you're going to use one hand to kind of make the rice ball and one hand to handle the fish. And you're just going to kind of feel and see if you can go by feel to get the same size rice ball every time. Here we go. Put it here. And this is just an easy way to do it. You can really do this however you want. I've seen sushi chefs do this 15 different ways. But you basically want to put the rice on top of the fish, and you want to flip it over, and then you want to square it up on the sides, and square it up on the top, and kind of drape it down. Flip it 180 degrees, do the same thing. Flip it 180 degrees, do the same thing. Some places say do it 5 or 6 times. I'm not that patient. And then give your hands a little bit of a rinse. And then I'm just going to dry them off because I'm going to pop these over to Armin real quick. I'm also going to show you how to mix soy sauce and wasabi to make a perfect mixture. All right, Armin, I'm going to give you a couple of nigiris here. I'm also going to make you some soy sauce. So there we go. I'm going to set this there for now. And Armin, you don't want any ginger, right?
No, thank you.
All right, so the optimal way to do wasabi mixing. You want this to be pretty spicy?
Please.
Put your wasabi in your bowl. If you've got a clump and you're going to be picking off the clump to mix it, pick off the clump and put it in your bowl first. Grab whatever soy sauce you're using and add just a little bit on top. Just like that. Grab your chopstick, 1 or 2, and we're going to give this a stir. And essentially what you're doing is you're almost making like a roux, but with wasabi and soy sauce. So we're wetting the soy sauce and kind of mixing it into a small, or you're wetting the wasabi, I should say, and mixing it into a small bit of soy sauce to get it evenly mixed. And then you're going to add a little bit more soy sauce and mix it a little bit more. And what this will actually end up doing is incorporating the wasabi throughout the entire soy sauce mix and give you a nice even flavor. Instead of getting those, kind of globs that float around and never really quite mix into the soy sauce. This takes a little bit longer and gives you a better experience. And then of course, as it mixes, you can start pouring more and more soy sauce. All right, here we go. Nice kick to that. Put this on the plate. Switch over to guest cam. And Armin, you've got 2 nigiri at the front left of your plate, and you've got a bowl of soy wasabi pretty much in the middle. And let me know what you think when you give it a shot.
Totally.
That's basic nigiri. Super simple to make. The hardest part is making sure the rice doesn't stick to everything that it touches. I'm gonna, instead of continuing to make nigiri for me, I'm gonna continue and make a roll. And for the rolls, I'm gonna grab some of this. I'm gonna grab this long piece of salmon here. The roll, I'm not gonna care at all about whether I'm going against the grain or with the grain. I'm sure there's a right way to do it. I don't know what it is. And honestly, it's gonna be inside of a roll, so it doesn't really matter to me. I'm gonna make this a pretty good sized chunk of salmon. And then on this one here, I'm just going to kind of trim off that corner. I'll probably use it in a different piece of salmon. Save everything, because you're probably going to end up needing that little itty bitty piece for just a corner of a roll at some point. How's it doing, man?
Restaurant quality, dude.
Awesome, awesome. Cool. So we're going to start doing our roll. The first roll we're going to do is actually going to be the Futomaki, which is the nori on the outside and the rice and fish on the inside. Prep your fish first before you start putting your roll together. Otherwise, the nori will get soggy as you're waiting for, cutting through fish, and not ideal. The fish is not going to go bad in the, 30 minutes that you're putting a roll together. So for this, let me actually get my roller out of the way. I'm actually going to cut my sheet of nori in half. I'm going to turn it rough side up, and then you're going to see little lines where it's been rolled and processed and everything like that. I'm actually going to pick the middle and just cut parallel to one of those lines. I've got two sheets here that I can make two Futomaki with. Let's see, move this over here just for now. Now I am not wrapping this in cellophane because the nori is going to be on the outside of the roll. If I'm doing a roll with rice on the outside, I'm going to be using a cellophane wrapped mat so that the rice doesn't stick to everything. We're going to want the rough side up. The nori has a smooth side, which you can see here. It's kind of shiny. And it's got a rough side, which is not so shiny. It's very easy to see when you're actually using the nori. Rough side up so that the rice sticks. We're going to get our hands nice and moist. You're going to create a pretty big ball here. You want to cover like 3/4 of the nori here with rice. I believe the official number is 75 grams of rice, but I'm just eyeballing it. So with the ball, we're going to set it kind of in the middle, and then flatten it out on the nori. You want to leave a little bit of a lip at the top. Not a huge deal if you don't. And by not a huge deal, I mean don't freak out if you didn't. The roll is going to turn out just fine. We're going to go ahead and moisten our fingers again so that we can work with the rice without it sticking to everything. And then we're going to flatten it out on the nori here. All right. So now for this, I like to just do one veggie and fish. So I'm going to do a little bit of cucumber right down the middle. Like so. And we'll grab our salmon here, set it there, and then what I can actually do is take this piece that I cut a little smaller, kind of fold it over itself so that it fits. Now we're going to roll. We are going to pick up the entire roll and make sure that we can keep the insides kind of centered. And we're going to roll it over once, just until the rice from the bottom of the roll touches the next row of rice, really. And we're just going to kind of push on it to set it. Then we're going to take our entire roll back And then we're going to use this as like the new top and continue to roll. So we'll just do that, and we will roll it over. Now at this point, you want to give it a nice little squeeze to kind of lock everything together. I'm actually going to cover my rice so it doesn't dry out. There we go. Got a nice little roll here. Now even this was a little bit too much filling, so the bottom is kind of popping out. Now, if you're using a full piece of nori, what ends up happening is it becomes a little bit too much seaweed. So I like to cut it down and try and find a good size to use for future sushi. And then we grab our knife. You're going to get your knife nice and wet. You're going to slice through. Try and make it as quick a slice as you can. Line them up like this, and now you can make 3 more slices. Or I guess 2 more slices for 6 pieces of nori. Here we go, 2. And 6. And there's your nori. And then you can arrange it to make it look pretty, like so. And then we'll take it to our dinner guest over here. Armin, got some nori coming for you. There you are, salmon and cucumber roll.
Sweet, that sounds awesome.
Actually, I gave it 2 more on the right-hand side of your bowl. Now, the next style of sushi is similar to what we just made, except we're going to have the rice on the outside and the nori on the inside. This one you're going to want to use a mat that's been wrapped in cellophane, like so. And I'm going to grab a different piece of nori. What do you think? We'll do the rough side up. Get our hands nice and moist. Grab a nice sized ball of rice here. Set it in the middle. This one here, you actually want to press the rice all the way to the edges. If you want thinner rice, go ahead and add less rice. If you want more rice, go ahead and add more rice. Again, these are your rolls. You can do whatever you'd like with them. You'll notice that even though I am wetting my hands pretty substantially, the rice is very sticky. I'm giving a quick rinse here and getting a little bit more water on my hands. Got to get some more rice. And we're going to make a California style roll here. Probably the best known of the sushi rolls, especially in California where I'm from. Now, we're essentially working on the outside of the roll right now. So if you want to add anything to the outside like sesame seeds or something of that nature, this is when you're going to do it. I'm going to go ahead and finish putting my rice down. That looks good. I'm also going to be putting quite a bit of stuff in here. We're going to be doing some of the crab that we made earlier. We're going to be putting some avocado. You can put cucumber if you want. And I'm actually going to make it a salmon California roll and put a couple of slabs of salmon in there. But what I want to do, I've got a mixture of Sesame seeds, black and tan sesame seeds. Just gonna go ahead and sprinkle them over the outside. Like so. And now what we're going to do is we're going to flip it. We're literally going to just do whoop, that. This is where we're going to put our filling for the roll. Make a little bit of a moat right down the middle. And I like to start with avocado. I'm just going to lay it flat along the center of the roll. Do that one. Like so. I'm going to put my salmon on that side. I'm going to need to cut another piece. Try and get it about the same thickness. And about the same length if you can. Let's get some of our real crab filling. Move this back up to there. Give this a good topping of crab. So. And some cucumber. All right, there we go. Now we're going to roll it very much the same as we did on the last one. We're just going to kind of roll it over. Good bit of pressure to kind of squish it together. And then back off and then roll the rest of it the rest of the way around. Good bit of pressure to form it. Then I can actually probably give it another little roll. And there we are. Set this off to the side. Now with the rice on the outside, this gets super, super sticky to cut. It's not very fun. Knives hate this. This is very much a knives hate him situation. So the way that you can kind of hack your way through this or make sure that it doesn't become too big of an issue is actually drape a bit of cellophane or plastic wrap over this outside part of the roll. So what I'm going to do is I've got a giant piece of cellophane over here that I got like, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, still haven't gone through it, and I lost the box. Came in a giant commercial box. So what I'm going to do is actually cut it like so. Drape it over the top of the roll like this. Now, this is also if you wanted to put fish on top of this. This is where you would drape your fish and then you would put the plastic wrap over it. I'm going to grab the mat that doesn't have any cellophane on it because cellophane on cellophane would stick. And I'm just going to make sure that this is nice and tight against the roll, like so. And you do the same thing if you had fish or avocado or anything on the top here. That's exactly what you would do. Get your knife. If it's got rice and stuff on it like mine does, I mean you can see there's basically starch caked onto the outside. Give it a nice wipe. Get as much of that starch off as you can. Run it under the sink if you have to. Get it nice and damp, nice and wet. It'll cut through the rice a lot easier. And then same principle. The cellophane will actually hold the roll together. Now in this case, I want to do 1, probably make 4 on each side, so 8. And see, I've already got to go and give it some more water because it's already getting too sticky. Now if you do this without the cellophane on the outside, the roll will probably just fall apart. It's very, very difficult to cut these without the cellophane on the outside. Hey, Barbie. Barbary. I actually can't read Japanese. Maybe Joff can translate for me. Joff's been doing Japanese for about 4 years. I just started actually a couple weeks ago learning. Actually, about a week ago, learning Japanese. There we go. 8 pieces. Remove the cellophane. Unfortunately, it's single use. I know, it's terrible. Yet it is the best way to cut a roll and keep it together. And here we go. Got a nice sushi roll. Ready to dip and eat. So what I'm going to do is give Armin 4 of these, and then eat 4 of these for myself. Before I move on, this is where you're going to start putting anything that you want on top of the roll. So here we go. If I want to do, let's say, some green onion, I can start putting some green onion on top, like this. Then if I also wanted to add some tobiko, I can understand that, Barbary. Me too. You just sprinkle some tobiko on top as well. This works even if you've put fish on top of this and rolled it. Oops, not there. Here. This is how you would do it on just to kind of garnish. I'm going to run your knife underneath it to separate it, just because the starch from the rice will stick to the cutting board. And Armin, I'm going to sneak in here. And you've got a roll on the front part of your plate.
Thank you very much.
You've also got 2 more of the nori ones on the right.
Okay, thank you.
Let you take a bite of that and let me know what you think. While you're doing that, I will mix myself up some wasabi as well, and give all of you who are watching a little bit of a recap on how to make a perfect soy sauce mixture with wasabi. Add the wasabi first. Put in just a little bit of soy sauce. And then just mix it. And essentially what you're doing is you're adding hydration to the wasabi, and it's going to dissolve into the soy sauce. And then after it kind of dissolves and becomes more of a paste, you just add more and more soy sauce, and it'll just distribute evenly. It's way easier to do this and get a nice even distribution of wasabi than it is to pour the soy sauce first, throw the glob in there and try and break it up. That doesn't work super well. But if you break it up and mix it up first, it mixes nice and evenly. In the sushi restaurants, I usually do this while I'm waiting for the rolls to arrive or the nigiri to arrive. Hey, come here, chopstick. And then here we go. Mm-hmm. Armin, what do you think?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Hey, Hannah. Hannah says hi. So, delicious. Now, one thing I do want to show you. This is what happens when you use too much nori. I'll go to this one. See how the nori kind of folds in on itself here? It's not a perfect circle. I could probably cut off like a third of that and have a better shaped roll anyway. Again, not a huge issue, but you'll notice that now there's double the rice on this side. So I'm actually not tasting the inside as much as I normally would if this was actually rolled well. So just wanted to give you that tip. Mm-hmm. Cool, cool. Armin, I'm going to give you the other 2 pieces of this.
Of your California roll?
Yeah.
Cool.
And now I'm going to make a rainbow roll. All right. So rainbow roll, very similar to what we just made. The only difference is there's no fish on the inside. It's purely a California roll on the inside. And then you layer fish on the outside nigiri style. So what we're going to do, we've got 2 pieces of salmon right there. I'm going to cut a couple of pieces of this tuna here. Actually clean this cutting board up a little bit first. Let me rinse my knife off as well. All right. So again, we want to cut against the grain. So I'm actually going to chop off the corner here. Now this corner I am going to use for the filling of another roll. I'm going to cut down this tuna, just straight down. That gives me 1. I'm going to do 2. There we go. Save that for more nigiri or more layered fish for the top. And then I've got some yellowtail down here. And we're also going to cut up. So, get him like so. Just going to cut down like that. Save that for inside of a roll. Cut it down. And cut down. Trim that bit off. And there we go. 6 types of fish. Well, 3 types of fish. 6 slices of fish. And now we're going to do very similar to how we did a California roll. We're going to grab our cellophane wrapped one. Move the fish up just a bit. Grab our nori. Let's try it with the half sheet. This might be a little bit small for this, but we'll see. We got our half sheet. Get our hands nice and damp. Come over here and grab a good hunk of rice. Keep the rest of it covered. Rough side up, always. Rice down. I'm going to push it to the corners on the top first, like so. And add a little bit more water to my hands. And continue. To the edge. To infinity and beyond. Make this a nice even layer of rice on the outside. Now I'm not going to put any sesame on the rice here because we're going to be covering it with fish anyway. So all I'm going to do, kind of rinse my hands off and flip, swoop, like so. Now on the inside, I'm going to put some of our crab. You see, once you've done all the prep, actually putting together the rolls is really, really not that difficult. It takes a little bit of finesse, but you get the hang of it really quick. And it's just a really quick and easy way to make some pretty damn good sushi. At home. A lot cheaper than if you go out to the restaurants. Give it a good bit of crab. Give it a good bit of cucumber. Armin, still doing okay over there?
Yep.
And I'm just going to put one cucumber. Some people say don't use cucumber in a California roll. I like the taste of cucumber, so I'm going to. No fish on the inside, just the veggies. Again, we're going to roll it pretty tight just until the one edge touches the other edge, and then unroll, and then continue like so. There's our roll. Set our mat aside. Now on top of this, we're just going to layer our fish. I'm going to do a salmon. I'm going to do a yellowtail. I'm going to do an ahi. Actually, let's do this. Let's do the tunas on the outside and the salmon in between. I'll do another salmon on this. Split it with one of our ebbies. There we go. In this case, I'm actually going to remove the tail from this one. No fun when you're eating a roll to go chasing that tail. And I'll just repeat the colors. Ooh. I have to layer this a little bit more than I thought. There you go. And if you want, you can also layer avocado on top. I think this roll is doing pretty well without the avocado. Again, I'm going to go and grab some of the cellophane from the roll. And put this over all of the fish. We're going to grab our uncellophaned mat. Really kind of press the fish in to shape it. Like so. And then before we take it off, give this a nice little cut. Go right through the middle of the shrimp, like so. And then we'll do there, 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 and there. And again, if you want to put some tobiko on top, or if you wanted to do, again, green onion and tobiko, I'm just going to do some tobiko. There you are. California roll, or I'm sorry, rainbow roll. I'm gonna go ahead and grab a bite here real quick. Ah! This is why I show that I'm terrible at eating sushi. It's pretty damn good sushi. Harmon, rainbow roll.
Sounds awesome. I'll need some more soy and wasabi too, please.
Okay, how is the temperature? You want me to kick it up a notch, or?
You could kick it up a notch, but it was fine.
Okay. All right. Rolls on your plate. Let me refresh you with the soy. Thanks, Veronica. Once I do this, I will actually dish myself up some miso soup and let you see what that looks like. And then we'll call this Cook Along Live done. It's been a long form one, a little bit over 2 hours, but it's about what I expected. There's a lot of prep work that goes into this, but then once the prep is done, it's just a lot of fun. Like, putting the actual rolls together is not a big deal. And you don't have to make the miso soup, it's just something to do while everything else is going on. And for me, miso soup is kind of one of the things that makes going out for sushi so fun and so tasty. You get that little aperitif before you really kind of dive into the meal. And so, of course, I'm going to make miso soup. There we go. Again, mix your wasabi with a little bit of soy sauce first to get it really thoroughly mixed. Remember, when you add more soy sauce, it will incorporate very easily. All right. Here comes your top off. I'm actually going to put the dish to the right of your plate. It's on the counter.
Okay.
Oh, cool. Hannah, yes, it's on par with Happy Roll. And I don't know if we told you, Happy Roll is no longer there. They got bought by the lady who ran it. Her daughter is doing really well with the PGA or the LPGA. And so they sold it to a place called Kinja. And the sushi's okay. It just kind of lost some of the charm that it had. But it's not bad. All right, let's do some miso soup here. Grab a ladle. I'm just pouring it into my bowl over here. Delicious bowl of red miso soup. I like to actually season my miso a little bit more with a touch of soy sauce and wasabi that I've already mixed up. Gives it a little bit of a spicy flavor and a good additional jolt of salt. Yeah, that was the owner, Hannah. She actually sold it. I think she's retired from the restaurant business because her daughter's doing so well with the LPGA. And Armin, Joff says, thank you for buying him dinner at Happy Roll a couple of times. That is good miso soup. Alrighty, everybody, another successful cook-along live in the books. Hopefully you guys are cooking or have plans to give your own sushi a try sometime soon. It's always a pleasure for me when I can get over here and cook something for you and have it be a success. Hopefully this doesn't look too difficult. I know there's a lot of steps kind of going on at once, but really once you kind of do the prep work, it all falls into place, and it's a lot of fun. If you have a family that's really, wants to dive in and kind of give their own rolls a try, and if you don't like fish, don't use fish, put something else in. Or if you don't like raw fish, cook the fish first. There's nothing that says that you can't do that to your own sushi at home. I mean, it might be a little bit more difficult to cut because cooked fish kind of flakes apart a little bit, but have fun with it. Cook it, chill it, see if you can chop it up and make it fit. Anyway, everybody have a great weekend, and I will see you next week for another awesome Cook Along Live. Have a great weekend, everybody. Bye.